This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, calls for the reform of the financial industry have been sounded far and wide since the Wall Street meltdown in 2008. But how will financial reform prevent another economic bubble if the banks themselves subvert their own internal warning systems? A two-part investigative series called Silencing the Whistleblowers reports that when fraud investigators working with big banks tried to warn their superiors of shady practices, they were not only ignored but frequently harassed, demoted, or even fired.
The article looks at the cases of 10 former fraud investigators at 7 of the nation's biggest banks and lenders. The article is online at thebigmoney.com. It was written by Michael Hudson, a journalist and author of the forthcoming book, The Monster, How a Gang of Predatory Lenders and Wall Street Bankers Fleeced America and Spawned a Global Crisis. He joins us here today. We're also joined by one of the 10 whistleblowers profiled in the article. Ed Parker was the former head of the mortgage fraud investigation at Ameriquest. He's joining us from Los Angeles, and we welcome you both to Democracy Now! Michael Hudson, lay out your investigation.
Right. You know, these folks were in-house mortgage fraud investigators, so their job definition was essentially to be whistleblowers, to find fraud and document it and expose it. Again and again, these folks, say that when they did, they were either ignored or marginalized, or in some cases demoted, fired, harassed, accused of embarking on witch hunts. One fraud investigator said that she was investigating a Ponzi scheme involving sort of a fake real estate development in the mountains of North Carolina, and she said that she wanted to be part of the meeting with the FBI between her bank, BB&T, and FBI investigators, and she says that one of the bank's lawyers told her, well, we don't want you in the meeting because if they ask you a question, you'll answer it.
In that particular case, I think her name was Amy Stroop.
Amy Strapp, right.
Strapp.
Yeah.
She actually discovered that the lender in the development or the development a company was actually paying the loans, the monthly payments of the people that they were supposedly arranging loans for.
The lot buyers, yeah. It was a pretty clear tip-off that there was a Ponzi scheme, and eventually 5 people associated with the development company did plead guilty in federal court and get prison terms. According to Amy Strapp's lawsuit, she felt though that the bank was really in a damage control mode. They were concerned that not only would they be on the hook for the $20 million that the bank had lent into the project, but also for some $100 million more in loans that other banks had made. So according to, she alleged that she was punished for pushing too hard on the case, and a Department of Labor administrative law judge upheld that and ruled against the bank and ruled to the bank that the bank had violated the whistleblower provisions of Sarbanes-Oxley.
And how often does that occur?
Not very often. Her case is unusual. I mean, one of the problems is that whistleblowers still don't have a lot of protections. There was a study done in the first 3. Sarbanes-Oxley was, passed in the wake of Enron and some of the other corporate scandals in 2002. There was an academic study that found that roughly whistleblowers won their cases about 5% of the time inside the Department of Labor bureaucracy. So. Not a very good record for them.
Ed Parker, you're a former fraud investigator at Ameriquest. Tell us what happened.
Well, I was hired by Ameriquest in January of 2003 to come in and develop the fraud investigation unit. Prior to my arrival at Ameriquest, fraud investigations or allegations of fraud was channeled through the Internal Control Department, which had multiple responsibilities, so they thought by bringing me in that they could kind of drill down and focus on systemic fraud within the organization. Immediately after arriving at Ameriquest, my first investigation uncovered systemic fraud in one of our branches in the Michigan area where the branch personnel was working in cahoots, collaborating with outside appraisals to boost value to do loans. that ended up causing a major investigation where we went into the branch with outside counsel and the head of our HR department, and we interviewed 9 of the 16 employees there. And during the course of that interview, we discovered that it was a branch practice to back into the loan to value, which was to determine which was the determinant factor that decided whether the loan was doable or not. We also discovered that at that time, AmeriQuest was doing what we call verbal appraisals, which is kind of unusual for me coming from a paper where the account executive could fax to the appraiser the desired estimated value that they needed in order to do the loan. Now, what's interesting about that is that 95% of the values that were faxed to the appraiser came back exactly as the amount that was indicated by the loan exec, which was odd because on the loan application, the borrower is asked, "What do you think your property is worth?" And so when we did our investigation and looked at the data, we saw that there was a high number of loans where verbal appraisals were submitted by the loan executives, and they all came back exactly, and that's untypical. That's not normal. So that was one of the things that I discovered early on, and that kind of ended with us closing the branch and having to bring back in-house a lot of loans that we had already sold on through secondary marketing to investors. So the company sustained a substantial hit because we had to go back and repurchase those loans because of our indemnification agreements and broker agreements that we had with the investors.
Most people had never heard of AmeriQuest, but it became one of the first big casualties, didn't it, of the whole subprime crisis. Could you talk about how extensive, how big the company was, and how much that particular situation that you uncovered there was replicated throughout the company?
It goes back to the business model. In terms of how they process loans and their whole business model, we didn't have central underwriting, so therefore, underwriting was basically up to the branch manager and the loan coordinator to package the loan and send it to our central location in Orange County, where the people there basically just were checking boxes to make sure all the documents there. So there wasn't any what we call prudent underwriting. Someone who did debt servicing, which is making sure that the debts were the debt ratio, the borrower qualified according to the debt ratio. There was no one to look to make sure that the notes and all the other legal documents were in order. That permeated the entire company. The company went from when I started in 2006. The company was doing millions, several $1 million a month. That escalated by the time 2005. We were in the billions in terms of our volume. As a matter of fact, AmeriQuest was we were right around #1 between countrywide. We were battling back and forth between who being #1 in the subprime industry. But it was widespread. I mean, there were other inducements we uncovered in our investigations that AmeriQuest, the people that were hired to work in our branches, came from high commission areas. They were not your typical quote-unquote traditional loan executives who are people who understood the loan, who understood what debt servicing was, who understood how to qualify a borrower, how to sit down and counsel a borrower whether or not this is a loan that we can do or whether they should go and come back and pay down some of the bills. These were people who were used to high-pressure sales, and it was a numbers game. So you do what you needed to do in order to make the loan work. What we're interested in is in quantity, not quality. And that became an issue for me because my department job was to report on the quality of the loans, which basically was to talk about fraud as we uncover it. So it was across the spectrum from just from the way in which we process loans in the branch to the way in which it was processed at the loan centers.
Michael Hudson, we only have a minute to go.
Right.
Can you talk about what most surprised you in this investigation that you did?
What most surprised me really was just the unwillingness according to the accounts of the fraud investigators, of top bank officials to really see that none